Well, Facebook, I'm back like bad style from the 80s. It's been a month. A month. Now, I was put into Facebook jail. Quiet, kitty. Well before any of these riots started owing to George Floyd's death. George Floyd, who may have been an actor. George Floyd, who may have died 3 years ago. George Floyd, who, regardless of who he really is, was killed in a terrible way that's inexcusable. But murdering more people and stealing a new pair of Jordans and a PS4 from Target aren't helping the black community any. Not even a little bit. It's ruining everything. But here's what we are seeing, and makes me a happy panda. COVID-19 is a complete fraud, and if you still believe in it, you are either a liar or an idiot. Chaz is the name. They couldn't have chosen a more stupid name. They were already doing this stupid this LARPing, live action role playing with antifascista, antifascista, antifascista. Sounds like that guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I am the Sultan of the Sea. That's what antifascista reminds me of. Is cheesy camp stupidity. This is antifascista. They already had a stupid name for their neo-brown shirts, for their neo-Bolshevism. But then they go and establish an independent country and name it Chad. Chaz. Like what were they saying before? Oh, watch out for that guy. He's a total Chad. Chaz is kind of short for Charles. And I know it's space AZ, and I haven't even looked up what it stands for because I don't care. Your stupid 6 blocks in the Battle of Seattle for blue-haired, back-of-your-head shaven, basement-dwelling, vegan-eating, lotion-wearing dominance is just not that high on my radar. And in point of fact, I'm going to bring up, because I have to, Chaz has list of things. Well, let's read this list of things Chaz wants. Okay? I'm gonna have to go on my Facebook. While I'm doing that, so I'm vindicated here. I told you people that COVID-19 isn't real, and you didn't listen to me. I told you people that you're the type that riot. You're the type that cause social unrest and are ruining this country. And then you go out and riot and loot and do exactly what I've been saying even before Trump got in. A lot of y'all don't know me from prior Trump days. A lot of y'all have no idea who I am. I started doing comedy in 2011. I have been aware of the double standard we are seeing now since at least 2003, the extent of it and the insidious nature of it, I wasn't quite as familiar about. How gross it really is, I didn't know either. I didn't realize about the elite using children as drugs by terrorizing them until adrenochrome is saturated and then drinking the blood of those children and getting an LSD-like effect. This is something I had no idea existed. But I knew they were evil. I just thought they were, duplicitous. I thought they were lying, thieving, I thought they were general, what do they call that? Garden variety duplicity. That's what I thought was the leftists, Al Gore type duplicity, lying about climate change, but for a good reason, because you want the earth to be better. I didn't realize it was outright Satanism, but then I learned through study and research that socialism, Marxism, communism, any collective ideology is in fact a rebranded form of luciferianism, and I've said that a number of times. If you've been following me while I've been in Facebook jail, I've started a dream journal. I've actually drafted a house, and I've been keeping busy. In fact, this was recorded the night before I got back on Facebook, so I could immediately launch it, immediately share it, and they're probably going to ban me again because they're evil. But I found a list of supplies needed for Independent Chaz. Now I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm not trying to mock. I'm not trying to call names. I'm just trying to tell the truth. You know what the truth is? I just want to make jokes, music. My ultimate goal in life, you know what my ultimate goal in life is? I want to make a sci-fi film. I want to make a Star Wars, a Matrix, a Fifth Element, a Guardians of the Galaxy. I want to make a decent science fiction film, and I don't want to have any political overtones. I just want it to be an adventure, and I want it to be where the good guy overcomes obstacles and has a happy ending. And they're neat obstacles. Maybe we'll pose an artistic question that challenges people, but the main thing is a fun a fun exertion, a fun not exert, a fun exploration, a fun outing where good triumphs over evil, and it's beautiful. We have some good locales and some good music and some interesting concepts. Science fiction I like because it's a big canvas. Science fiction is really just fantasy writ modern. That's all it is. You know, the alchemists of the old day aren't much different than the scientists of today. And if you don't believe that, COVID mother effing 19. I said effing because I'm on Facebook. If you're not purple-haired and sexually diverse, you're not allowed to use swear words in the modern world. You can only use swear words or say anything that isn't strictly professional on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, and all the other brainwashed technocracy temples online. You can only do that stuff. You can only really be free if you're in lockstep to their fascist ideology. Because I've characterized them as fascists, this will probably get shadow banned and I'll probably get blocked again. Some whistleblower, some snitch, some weasel rat fink fatherless toady is very likely going to report me to the thought police, as I've already been in thought jail for a month. I don't intend on changing my thoughts. And here's a newsflash, I don't hate anybody. Even the thought police, I don't hate them. I see them as deceived individuals who need Christ. I don't hate them. I disagree with them. I can defend my position, and I can use facts to do so. But I don't hate them, and I don't want them not to have the ability to speak. I just don't want my abilities to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't want that to be stifled. But they want to stifle me because when I tell the truth, their lies can't stand up to that. It's really that simple. And that's why people threaten to beat me up. I've had, in New York, somebody I've never even met, some black guy named Neruda Williams, Neruda Williams, rich enough to buy a 3D printer and talk about it in his Facebook, made a list of racist comedians. One of them was Nick DiPaolo. And I got to tell you something. You know, I don't like being called racist, but I'm flattered to be on a list with Nick DiPaolo. I am not that high up the comedy chain. I got on America's Got Talent once. That's my claim to fame. That's my 15 minutes right there. That's all I got. Nick DiPaolo's been headlining 31 years on the road. That's a lot. I've been headlining on the road since 2011. I probably shouldn't have started back then. I wasn't experienced enough. I'd say for the last 7 years it was valid. And in the last 3 years I've really come into my own as French accent and gotten the ability to work with the audience. But I'm flattered to be on that list. I'm not flattered to be defamed. Especially in this litigious world where they don't even allow you to speak, being on a list like that can ruin your career. Now, I believe in Christ. I believe God is bigger than these little sycophantic blue-haired toadies running around Seattle pretending like they've got a country when in reality they're just going to be in their mother's basement come winter because they can't support themselves. And there's a lot more interests monetarily aligned to the businesses that were there beforehand than any of the crap they got going on. They're LARPing. Fine and dandy. They're having their delicious fun. Okay? Those people run YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and all the rest. And if they see that I'm on a racist list, they're not going to let my videos go. Even if I'm not cursing or trying to hurt any race, I'm just politically separate. That's going to run against me. So I may have to get involved in a class action lawsuit against this guy, but not against Neruda Williams specifically, even though if he's got any money, I'd really like to take it, because screw you for calling me racist. You've never met me, you sycophantic, rat-like toady living in New York. eating the Kool-Aid and using it as an excuse to justify looting and theft because you are greedy and selfish. So, you know, if me and the other 43 people on that list can divide up your assets and you go without any money, you know what? That wouldn't hurt my feelings. I mean, I live out of a van. I've had to rely on the charity of others since this COVID-19 thing began. I'm not in debt and I work. I don't do anything, you know, I don't demand anything. I'm not entitled. But it would be nice to see justice. What would be even better is if Facebook, who allows pedophiles, this racist Neruda Williams guy, and a bunch of other double standard BS, it would be a lot better if Facebook were disbanded and their assets distributed among those that they have prejudicially maligned in ways that actually hurt their careers. And there's money behind that. I mean, I've lost thousands of dollars because I'm conservative. And you know, here's the thing. If I ever make it to be someone who is a name, if God's put it in me to do that, I can't sit on my beliefs. The people who've done that, they have everything to lose if they come out of the closet and say, you know what, I believe in right and wrong. I believe this writing's BS. I believe COVID-19 is BS. A male is a male, a female is a female. We shouldn't have sexually perverse individuals trying to groom them in public library institutions, preschools, or kindergartens. That's wrong. We shouldn't be following UN mandates that teach children how to diddle themselves. That's also wrong. Things like sexuality are self-determinate. They're not pre-decided before birth. Neuroplasticity is a scientific function that demonstrates the things we do literally change our DNA. If you've ever been to a gym, you know that's true. It's the same with smoking, drinking, watching films, stealing things, being an adultering personality who's promiscuous and lies about it, being truthful, following sexual kinks and fetishes. These things change your DNA. You form a neural pathway in your brain in 21 days. That doesn't mean you'll have the habit perpetually, but if you just follow through and do something for 21 days, you form a neural pathway, keep reinforcing that neural pathway, and eventually it becomes codified into who you are at a genetic level. There's a fine TED Talk, and TED Talks don't generally agree with me, by a gal, her name is Caroline Leaf, I believe it is, and she talks like this because she's from either New Zealand or Australia. Excellent. I love how they talk down there. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot easier to do than a lot of English accents for some reason. You just pretend you're from England and you're trying to keep the bugs out of your mouth, and then you're from South Australia or Adelaide or New Zealand. Or if you do it like you can't breathe right, then you're from South Africa. South Africa. You say South, S-I-T-H, like the Dark Lord of the South Africa down in Joburg. I like how they talk. Point being, you can find her seminar, and it's very interesting on neuroplasticity. Anyway, so let's look at the supplies needed in jazz. Clothes. Male pants, male L shirts, belts, men's shoes. That doesn't seem very gender neutral. Male? Couldn't you say chromosomally Y-based individuals? Male? Brrr. YouTube, Facebook, you can't let anything from the city of Chaz come out. They're sexist. Brrr. That's the sound they make when they're masturbating. Brrr. Ice, the good kind. That must be methamphetamine. Cigarettes plus lighters. Ooh, we can't make our own fires in the free city of Chad. Lanterns, flashlights, and headlamps because apparently they don't have power. Portable solar chargers. Ooh, we're going to be sustainable in Chaz. Gatorade, electrolyte powder. In Chaz, they need what plants craves. What's that? Backpacks and reusable bags. Tents, sleeping pads, pillows, tarps, track phone with a minute card. Because we don't want to be traced in the free city of Chaz. You water-brained, chromosomally robust, foolhardy conglomeration of LARPing idiots. Body lotion, shoes, bedding, comforters, zip ties, folding chairs, laundry bags, personal fans, body wash, disinfectant, sunglasses. What, are you starting a new country or are you going on a weekend retreat in your dormitories? You idiots. You don't get to get anything. Oh, we need help in the free city of Chad, and if you help us out, with our creature comforts. You're fighting the nationalists. Because that's why they lisp. It's like snakes. It's a subconscious spiritual thing. That's where all the lisping comes from on the progressive left. A snake lisps. It's that sort of thing. It really is. So the free city of Chaz. It's ridiculous. And that's what they're trying to do. And what this is, let me explain to you what's going on here. Socialist agitators who are professional and foreign to our country have brainwashed stupid college kids through the collegiate system. I know these professors. They were teaching evolutionary ideology in Shakespeare. Okay? Whether or not you believe in evolution, it's got nothing to do with romantic comedies from Shakespeare in Victorian England. Elizabethan England. My bad. It's got nothing to do with that. 1500s to 1600s. Why are you going to teach me evolution in a Shakespeare class, Cornell College? That's another rabbit hole. But they had a Bulgarian instructor teaching Shakespeare. I'm not going to go to Russia and teach Dostoevsky. Я помните, как по-русски, потому что я учусь 4 семестра в колледже. I understand Russian because I studied 4 semesters in college. Okay? Я читаю, не помните. Я читал все Dostoevsky книги. Read? I can't do the conjugation. I read all of Dostoevsky, pretty much. Like 80 to 90% of his writings. Okay? I understand him backwards and forwards. I'm not going to teach a course on Dostoevsky in Russia. You know why? Потому что русский язык это не моя начал язык. Because the Russian language is not my starting language. Because I don't know how to say first in Russia. I'm not going to go. But in in Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa, they have a Bulgarian come over and teach you Shakespeare. Now, this is in 2008, 12 years ago. That's the level of water-brained extra-chromosomality, the chicanery, shenaniganery BS defining leftist institutions back then. As of last year, the year before, that same college where I got my bachelor's degree had segregated dormitories. Blacks in one dorm, whites not in that dorm. That's Cornell. That's Iowa. Okay? That is on the backside of the country's heart, probably where all the fat and cholesterol is stored that's going to give our country an Antifa heart attack as these water brains go about marching in their Target clothes. That's another thing that's funny to me. Who had the open bathrooms for men and women? Gender diverse bathrooms, gender neutral. Target did. Who was kneeling with Colin Kaepernick? Stand for something, even if it means losing nothing, because you're in the NFL and you're a millionaire and you already won the game of life in the world. America has kings that are homeless in the streets. They're called Antifa, but America is doing so well as a country that our homeless people are essentially royalty. And you're going to say you live in this country and you're oppressed? Oh, get out the tiniest violin, you poor oppressed NFL star, Colin Kaepernick. But no, Nike gets behind him. Target has the neutral bathrooms. And who does Antifa and these black protesters involved with bowel movement, Bureau of Land Management, Black Lives Matter, who do they target? They target Target and Nike, and they loot them. They're like, yeah, I'm about to end 200 years of oppression if I steal me these Jordans. Ooh, look at me, I'm gonna get me this coat. Ooh, look, I'm looting and riding. This for Black Lives Matter. Look at me, I'm saving the world by stealing from a big corporation because they got insurance. You idiots. But the irony is hilarious because these big organizations kowtowed, they sympathized with and humored these immature adults in a state of arrested development. And they're the first ones to get looted. And the ma and pa stores, like that poor black guy who owned a bar, spent his life building a bar, because great, hey, I got a bar. I got friends forever. There's always going to be money coming in. It's been my dream. No, they're going to loot his bar. And while he's telling the press this, They come in and they looted some more. It's pretty sad. And that black woman who she had her apartment complex burned down. Her family complex, rental real estate, that is a great way to make solid, legal, honest income. It takes a lot of work. It's very hard. Once you get that train rolling, you're in good shape. They burned it down. Why? Black Lives Matter. I need to steal me some Jordans. You own some stuff. I don't own some stuff. I'm going to burn it down. Idiots. What else happened? David Dorn, no relation to Michael Dorn of Star Trek, is shot. He's in his 70s. He's just trying to do his job. He's an ex-cop working security for a pawn shop. They kill him. They murder him so they could loot a pawn shop. Wow. That's really showing how white people are evil. Good for you. And then there's that poor black cop who gets killed in her squad car. She's just sitting in her squad car. She gets killed by these thugs. They're thugs. You know what the term thug comes from? It comes from the Thuggee cult, which was an Indian cult, not we'll put the piece of corn in the fish's mouth and bury him so that it grows up better. Not Native Americans. More, if I do this voice, I'm considered very, very racist, even though it is quite a lot of fun. Those guys. The Thuggee cult was a Shiva group, and Shiva's the god of creation and destruction in the Hindi religion. And so the reason the Thuggee cult predominated for hundreds of years is because it was a legitimate religious wing of that ideology in India. And what they did is they'd hang out by the highway, join a group of travelers, act like they're their buddies, slip them some roofies, probably the Indian equivalent of LSD or whatever, and then strangle them and steal all their stuff. That is Tuggy. And the British people are like, hold on now, we've lost all our tea coming from Mumbai to Bombay. It's the same city. I don't know my geography in India. This is no good. No. No, we must stop these tuggy tugs. And then NWA comes out and everybody's like, we thugs. Yeah. We're gonna get you drunk and steal your stuff. We thugs. Oh my gosh. Common thugs. I know these guys. A guy named Real Rich, he's been threatening to beat me up for months. I've screenshot it all. Guy named Max Goldman's been defaming my character. Guy named Neruda Williams has, and some guy named Rich Gibbs. These people have threatened or lied about me or tried to defame me, and I've got all the evidence in a folder on Facebook. Why? Because I'm conservative. It's no deeper than that. I don't want to stop them. I don't want to beat them up. I'll defend myself, and I'm not doing anything wrong, so I see no reason why God wouldn't allow the right thing to happen. However, I don't want them not to have a voice. So last year in 2019, by the way, where's all the gay people in rainbow dildo suits marching through the streets? Is their rioting protests of morality less important than that of the black people? Can't they protest together? No, I don't think they can. Why? Because this is all brainwashing social Marxism. This is ideological subversion designed to undermine our principles in our society so that we collapse, and what can fill the void but collectivist ideology. Basically, the bureaucrats are positioning themselves as new royalty. All socialism and Marxism is a collective ideology, which is rebranded luciferianism. And the end result is a sort of neo-feudalism, a new feudalism. So they promise you the moon, and then they turn you into a peasant. And if you eat the Kool-Aid, drink the Kool-Aid, but they'll tell you to eat it, never mind. If you ingest their lies, then they'll allow you to climb the ladder. And then as long as you stab the other guys in the back and just become a thoroughly wicked individual, you can keep climbing that ladder till you become a Stalin and murder millions. That's how the system works. That's Juche, which means self-reliance in North Korean. Juche is the religion of the Kims, which defines a new socialist state. But the North Korea state is just where socialism ends up going naturally. Marxism is the caterpillar. Socialism is the pupa in the cocoon, and communism fascism, authoritarianism, these are the nasty, dirty moths flapping around, leaving their dust everywhere, and then dying on your deck, leaving you with a mess to clean up. That's what it is. It's a life cycle. So no, socialism and communism aren't Marxism. But it's like saying an adult and a teenager and a child aren't the same when it's only one person you're talking about. Okay, yeah, you know what? A baby's different than an adult. When I was a baby, I didn't have this big old beard. All right? A teenager is different than a baby. When I was a teenager, I started getting interested in girls. When I was a baby, I was like, ew, girls. And adults different than a teenager. Okay? All three of those are different. But those are all me. I'm the same guy. Okay? Marxism, socialism, communism, authoritarianism, fascism, it's all the same thing. It's a progression. And what they do is they argue over semantics because these people are seeking after a utopia. And ultimately, when you iron it all out and you pull back the green curtain or take off those emerald glasses, you realize the city's gray. There's just a little hobo with a hologram pretending to be the Wizard of Oz, and it's all a bunch of lies. All right? These idealists, these ideologues that are pushing the socialist mandate, they're chasing dystopia, and the reason they're doing it is because as a corporate group they've decided to play pretend. They say they don't believe in God or right and wrong, but they certainly believe in right and wrong because they believe anybody who disagrees with them is wrong. They're the most absolutists out there. Listen, I believe in objective absolute truth. Part of that is love your neighbor as yourself. That's what God says. That's the golden rule. If you're loving your neighbor as yourself, you don't want to be shut down when you have an opinion that's unpopular. So you let them have their opinion. You have yours. You're free to have your opinion as long as I can say mine. It's not a big deal. They don't believe in that. But they do believe in racial equality. So there's a dichotomy here. On the one hand, they say there are no absolute truths. Gender diversity, if you're born with a penis, you could be a woman. That's very stupid, but they believe that. On the other hand, they believe if you disagree with them, then you are worthy of death. Because it's that wrong. This is a new cultic orthodoxy that has become politicized. We're looking at a political cult here. It's Luciferianism rebranded. Let me tell you what Luciferianism is. Luciferianism, worship of Lucifer, is essentially the theosophical ideal as espoused by Aleister Crowley and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and all these cultists from Russia and England that seeded their way into the U.S. The basic tenet that Crowley wrote down was, do as thou wilt. Do what you want. That's what it is. Sounds great, doesn't it? Except some people will rape and murder a girl or a guy or a child or an animal. You know, they're like, ooh, do what I want with my penis. That's what a lot of these people think. It's very disgusting. Because when you go that route, essentially what you're doing is you're opening yourself up to one kind of thinking, that which involves personally pleasuring yourself. But there's a problem with that. You ever smoked weed? You ever drank alcohol? You ever had sex? Guess what? The first time isn't the same as later times. There's that song, feels like the first time. I scared the cat. Feels like the very first time. Bam, bam. It's Foreigner, right? Well, what he's talking about is when he's making love to his gal, it's so great it always feels like the first time. Well, why would that matter if the first time weren't great? See, in sexuality, in use of substances, in comedy, in performance, in building, there's something special about breaking the threshold. And once you've done that, you can never regain that experience. What you can do is you can move on to greater and better experiences, but you can never regain that first experience. And what people in our world try to do is they try and recapture it time and time and time again, and they can't. So they build up a tolerance, which requires them to do stranger and stranger things to get an inkling of that feeling they had the first time. So people who smoke weed, you know, they get to a point where, oh, this isn't getting me high anymore. Oh, maybe I'll put some wax in a concentrate form, take a butane lighter, stick it in glass, and inhale as much as an eighth in one puff that makes me cough for 10 billion years. And now I'm a dabber. And then 5 months later, they look like a crackhead. Or somebody who has a lot of promiscuous sex, they have sex with one woman, they try every orifice out, then they have a threesome and a foursome, and then they're like, well, this isn't doing it anymore, maybe I'll try a dude. And then off they go into the AIDS grass. By the way, AIDS probably isn't what you think it is. Look into Fauci, that little creep who talks like this. Oh, I'm Anthony Fauci. I hang out with Weinstein. I hang out with Epstein, Steen. I give all the Jewish people a bad name and stay in your homes forever and don't ever shake hands again. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm pro-Israel. However, guys like Fauci, he's Italian. Guys like Fauci, guys like Weinstein, guys like Epstein, these people who do these wicked things and get to prominence, I see why they were anti-Zionists. I disagree with them, and I'll just tell you why. Uh, Jewish people are God's chosen people. It says, those who bless thee, I will bless thee. Those who curse thee, I will curse thee. In Scripture, I believe God's word because that's the axiom that defines all reality. You don't have to agree with me, but you'll find that out eventually. And so it's like God's king, and Israel is one prince. Now, Christ died and rose again and grafted in the rest of humanity. Those of us who follow him are the second prince, right? We're like an orphan boy. We're like a Jon Snow, if you want to go Game of Thrones. We're part of the Stark family, but not directly. So for Jon Snow to say one of the Stark children is messing around, you know, Ned Stark ain't going to listen to that. For me, as a grafted in child of the king, to go and criticize the natural born child of the king, even when that person's being a jerk, it's going to get me in trouble. I let the king deal with his own kids. And Joffrey, which is how a lot of the Zionists are, he's going to get his comeuppance, and it's none of my business. I want him to do great. I want to bless the king. Long live the king. Long live your royal line. And here's the thing about it. According to Scripture, there's Jewish people that will come around, and there's those that will be part of what Christ calls the synagogue of Satan. And it literally is that. See, a lot of people look at Scripture and they think there's a lot of euphemisms there. But the deeper you look and the more knowledgeable you become, the more you realize it's very literal. There are parables and poetry passages and things like that in Scripture. Every literary device from analogies to allegories to metaphors can be found in Scripture. But there are definitely catalogs of facts. For example, when Noah, when Noah lives in that boat for a year and there's a big old flood, that is not an allegory, a metaphor, or a parable. That's a catalog of history. However, when the Good Samaritan helps the guy that got beat up by the side of the road, that's a parable. Song of Songs is full of poetry that is meant to give you an idea of what a good relationship between a man and a woman looks like. Psalms is poetry about the state of mankind and God. Proverbs is a bunch of proverbs. Ecclesiastes is similar. These are books of poetry. The histories are the histories, though. The book of the law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers. These have historical elements throughout. There's actually very little poetry in them. There is poetry. When the Israelites are leaving Egypt, they sing a song. That song is poetry. But the plagues, that's not poetry, that's not mythos. That happened, and there's actually evidence in the archaeological record. You just have to understand we're living in a two-sided spiritual battle, and the truth is always going to be downplayed as ubiquitously, as hard as it can be downplayed by the opposition. Because the opposition knows it's wrong. Just like all these anti-fascista LARPers. Live action role-playing is what's going on here. Anti-fascista, they're LARPing. BLM, they're LARPing that 1992 song by Sublime. Something, 1992. I was in the street, tell me where were you? You were something on your TV while I was participating in some anarchy. That is some hick, redneck stupidity. Listen, I don't hate Sublime, but I don't like a lot of the crap they sing about. Same with Red Hot Chili Peppers, same with all this stuff. Because you know what it does? It foments these ideas. What they've done in that song is romanticize looting and theft. That's stupid. You don't but they're not the only ones to do that. Hollywood does it all the time. Who doesn't love a good heist picture? Okay? From the top down, the luciferianism I keep coming back to permeates our society. So I know I'm a little off focus here. I want to get it all out because they're probably going to ban me again. So I'm just trying to hit every topic I can. I'm not going from a notebook. This is just off the dome. So let's go into why socialism, Marxism, communism, fascism, authoritarianism, collectivism in general is rebranded Luciferianism. The mystery religion ideals that go all the way back to ancient Babylon and before that, because they permeated the world in antediluvian times, what we would call the Kingdom of Atlantis or Lemuria, as some of the hippies in Washington and Oregon like to call it. They tapped into a real spiritual energy, much like electricity or gravitational energy or radiation or magnetism or steam power. These are all forms of energy. The internet's sort of ideological energy. I think, well, we'll go into that later. They tapped into some of this energy in a certain way, and there is a spiritual energy which suffuses the mystery ideologies. And it is infernal, but it's seductive, and it feels good, and it seems great that first time. Until you need more and more and more and more hits, and then you're Hillary Clinton murdering children with Huma Abedin in a video called, what is it? Fraggle Drip or something like that. I can't remember, but it was on Anthony Weiner's laptop and it said life insurance, and it's a picture of Huma and Hillary, a picture, a video of them terrorizing a poor little girl as hard as they can before they kill her so they can get that adrenochrome, because there's no other way to get it. So eventually, you know, you need more and more and more hits because your tolerance just gets so high that you have to do that sort of thing. So when it starts out, though, you know, it's not anything quite like that. It's lying, right? The father lies. It's telling a little white lie and getting something for it. Ooh, that felt great, didn't it? Now, later on, the fallout, because every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and there is that sort of reality permeating in the metaphysical realm as well, the fallout is requisite to the wickedness. It's a heat exchange. You know, it's the same sort of thing, but on a moral level. And that's what I said. I'll get into that another time. There's a sort of morality physics that exists. That's what the law in the Old Testament is really all about, in my opinion. I may be wrong about this, but in the Old Testament it says to do things like to stay out for 7 days if you've done a certain thing that makes you unclean. You know, don't go near anybody if you touch a dead body. Well, it turns out there are microorganisms that exist, but there's other aspects of it. For example, the layout of the Hebrew temple looks much like a microchip, but made big. It's like a big microchip is what it looks like. If you look at the layout of the tabernacle, I believe it was before it became, it might have been Solomon's temple. I'll have to look into this, but it looks a lot like a microchip. Now, I'm not saying that's anything definitive, but the weird rules in the Old Testament have to do with a codified ideological sort of metaphysical physics. And the thing about it was, God gave the Israelites a chance of just accepting His grace, a choice of that, or, you know, working out their own salvation. And, you know, they'd been living in Egypt for a while, and they wanted to get away with doing some bad stuff here and there because they tried it a few of the first times and it felt so good. So they wanted to do that. And so they wanted a way of absolving themselves. So God said, oh, okay, you're not just going to accept my, all right, well, here's what you got to do. And He gave them the law, because the law shows us that we are inadequate to fulfill it. There is a metaphysical give and take, a heat exchange here in the moral metaphysical sense that we are inadequate to answer to. That's one of the reasons we need Christ, who dies and rises again, so that we have the sort of golden ticket into God's Willy Wonka land in the afterlife. For us to be absolved, we need God to do it, because we can't do it ourselves. You got to understand what the concept of sin is. Sin is hamartia. Hamartia is a Greek word which means to miss the mark. You can't miss the mark unless you're aiming for the mark. So like, say you got a bow and arrow and you're aiming at a target and you miss. That's hamartia. You weren't trying to miss. You were trying to hit it. You couldn't. You missed the mark. That's what sin is. Now, there are people like Huma Abedin and Hillary Clinton and George Soros and the Abramovic woman and Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and Aleister Crowley and JPL's Jack Parsons. I don't know if it's Parson or Parsons. All these people are deliberately pursuing that which we know to be evil for their own selfish ends, to do as thou wilt, which ends up, like I said, just becoming weird sex stuff. So there is, oh, I'm not even going to aim for the target. Look at this. I'm going to shoot myself in the foot. Ow, it hurts exquisitely. That's kind of what Satanism really is. But a lot of people are just trying to hit that target, and it's hard to hit the target. They can't do it. What God does is he adds a sort of homing beacon to your arrow so you can hit the target. And that homing beacon is the grace of Christ. Salvation comes through grace by faith, lest any man should boast. So what happens is you accept that God died and rose again for you so that you have the ability to shuck off the virus of sin. It's like a virus in a computer. The world we live in, the universe, is a sort of simulation, and we have a virus that requires the error-correcting code of Christ. Without that, we can't boot into the quasi-dimensional, extra-dimensional reality of God, which is beyond ours. So life is kindergarten, death is the first grade. I'm doing this on a Macintosh. When you turn it on, there's a little loading bar, and then boom, you can access your desktop and do whatever you want. Life is that little loading bar. Life is kindergarten. Life is the preparatory phase where metaphysically our souls are indexed and the post-dimensional programming is put in order through the experiences we have and the things we learn and our failures and successes so that we're prepared for an eternal existence where there is no entropy, there is no breakdown, there is no death. So you need prepared for that. Because in our world today, we have this idea that eat, drink, tomorrow we may die, life's a bitch and then you die, smoke a bowl, let's all get high. That's our ideology in the modern world today. That's not the ideology of eternity. The ideology of eternity is that we as kings and priests and sons and daughters of God himself have the ability to create. He made us in his image. He's a creator. We like to create. I like to write music. I like to write stories. I like to do videos. I'd rather be doing music or stories or something. These isn't my mode of creation, but I've been forced into this niche by these protesters, so, I'll lean on it. So what socialism, Marxism, Luciferianism, authoritarianism, all these isms do from the mystery religious school, they try and tap into the sort of metaphysical physics and manipulate them. Primarily, this involves hidden psychology. The term occult comes from oculus, okay? Now that's a word which has to do with sight, They've got the Oculus Rift, the thing right there. Occult means hidden. It's basically meaning the knowledge is hidden, right? So the psychology of archetypes and other little things that influence people into action is well known and closely guarded in these mystery religions because this small amount of knowledge gives them a lot of power over people. And there's a lot of things that have to do with rituals. You watch a ritual, you hear the music, you smell the smells, you feel the vibrations, and you have a memory, and that memory circulates around in your head, and it leads to action. So what these media moguls, these Hollywood elite people do, is they put a lot of symbology and subtle ritual reenactments in these films, and you don't know that's what they are. So you get inducted into this occult way of metaphysical physics manipulation. You become part of their metaphysical machine, and you don't even realize it. People who've done hallucinogens understand this a lot. Because if you look in a lot of, especially computer animated films, because the technocracy relies on a lot of hallucinogenic substances. Microdosing is dropping little bits of acid all day. That's why their eyes are all big like that. You look at these Pixar animated films, the Lego movie especially, the sequel. These movies are really about pulling people toward this luciferian cult, okay? Like in the Lego Movie 2, he goes to the girls' world, and it's so great, and everybody's pink and sparkly, and they do all the colors there in acid colors, which are these sort of bright neon colors. So you look at all these films, and it's subtly telling you to do this. It's like a secondary plot to the main plot. Just to give you an example, C.S. Lewis did it the good way in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. See, that's an oblique sort of allegory for what Christ did. But it's not really an allegory because in that book, Christ is Aslan, just in another universe. So C.S. Lewis was reimagining that and reimagining what the death and resurrection would look like in another universe. It's not necessary. There aren't any extraterrestrials. There's not. There are demons and angels, and they occupy our terrestrial plane locally. So they're not extra anything. They're extra dimensional if they're anything like that. You look at a UFO, it goes faster than the speed of sound, and there's no sonic boom. There's an extra dimensional component involved there. You can check out Chuck Missler's Return of the Nephilim. It's a 2-hour-long seminar. I saw it in fall of 2008, and it set me down one of the deepest rabbit holes I've ever been down, but it made it so that I can understand what's going on pretty well. So there aren't any aliens like this, because Christ died for mankind. Mankind dies once, and then the judgment. Because of mankind's sin, all creation travaileth. That means Jupiter, Mars, Far Centaurus, if we're talking a Heinlein novel called Orphans of the Sky. All that stuff. All that stuff is the whole creation travailing. So sin, I think, and I get this idea from Kent Hovind, sin brought hamartia into our universe. Man's sin brought hamartia. Hamartia, or entropy is the word I'm looking for. Systems of order break down over time. That's the second law of thermodynamics, and that exists because of entropy, which is sort of a scientific term that kind of talks about death. We were made to be eternal beings. We were never meant to die. We have a difficult world because man invited in the virus of entropy, sin, and death by disobeying God's order. God gave man the simplest order so that mankind could be non-autonomous and think for himself. See, if God just made everybody robots, we'd never sin, but we would never think for ourselves either. Okay? God made us in his image, so that means we have to be self-directed and have free will. For us to have free will, we have to willingly choose to follow God, because he made us like a car that has a God-shaped void to run on him as a fuel, right? So our void runs on him. We have to choose it, though. He's a gentleman. He's not going to force it on us. So what does he do? He gives us the whole universe. The earth is like a seed in a universe of memory. And I think God's design is for us to sprout and fill the whole universe with quadrillions and quintillions of people that are innumerable. But he gives us a choice, and we fail the choice. The simplest thing in the world. Hey, there's these 2 trees. Just do everything you want. Do anything you want. Just don't eat from these 2 trees. All right? Just anything you want. Just don't eat from these 2 trees. Eve didn't see God make anything. She eats from the tree. Adam sees Eve eat. He's like, man, I'm not going to get any fun if God has to kill her. He actually kind of sacrificed himself. See, he knew what she'd done. And he had 2 choices at that point. He could be like, God, look what she did. Or he could be like, oh, sure, I'll have a bite too. And then, of course, when God comes, he goes coward. He's like, oh, well, God, this big-breasted woman you gave me, it was her fault. Now, God was merciful too. God could have been like, all right, well, Control-Alt-Delete, start over with this new universal simulation. But no, God gave mankind the ability to boot into eternity anyway. God knew we were going to do this. He knew we were going to do it. Even so, he allowed us to do it rather than doing the thinking for us. It's like if you have a child, right? And you know they're going to fall when they start to walk. So you can either never let them fall, or you can let them fall and get back up and try again. Well, God hoped mankind wouldn't fall, but he knew they were gonna. And he knew if they're going to fall, I have 2 choices. Put my skin in the game, or kill him. So God did the merciful thing because he's good. He put his skin in the game. And what that means is that human beings have free will and the ability to choose right and wrong and do wonderful things. And we also, because we have that ability to choose right and wrong, we have the ability to do terrible things. And that's where the problem of pain is rooted. That's why there are bad things in the world that are causing people to riot. Because we can do good and bad. And God allows us to do that because we're made in his image. And he's not a bully, and he's not going to force our hand. Now, there are times when he comes and he influences the course of historical events. Not often, and I don't understand why he does that or doesn't, because I'm not God. I do know the ideology and the narrative of Scripture is consistent not only with the reality we understand in here, but with archaeological reality they found. Nineveh. They find anything in the Bible. They find it. If they don't find it immediately, they find it eventually. Even in World War I, they used Jonathan's attack plan on the Philistines to attack some of the Germans. A British guy did it. You can look up into that. It's very interesting. The same topography existed in Israel at the time. I don't remember exactly who he was attacking. I think it was the Germans. You'll have to look into that. I'm just relaying it. So, the reason I'm saying all these things is because there is a metaphysics to morality. There's a physics to morality. We call it metaphysics, but there's more to it than that. We're talking the same action-reaction sort of thing. So the mystery religions co-opt this action-reaction sort of ideology. They occult, they hide it, and they know that, say, if you tell somebody they can't do something, they're going to go do it. That's reverse psychology, right? A lot of the modern psychological ideologies that we subscribe by vis-a-vis Freud and Jung are repackaging of these already known tropes. So they co-opt that, and this ideology is a collective one, because part of the psychology involves a sort of collective ritual mindset. It says in Proverbs, hand in hand they shall not go unpunished. It's like the first chapter or the second chapter. It's talking about how if people come up to you and say, hey, throw in your lot with us, we're going to knock over this bank. And we're all going to be millionaires and we're going to be rolling in it. And what happens is they all end up killing each other because they're all greedy. And if you're willing to knock off people you don't know, you're going to knock off people you do know. If you're a thieving son of a gun, if you're a thieving bastard, you're going to be a thieving bastard. Well, when everybody's together, though, they're sort of locked into their own BS, right? So what these mystery religious circles do, they usually start off in the induction process by getting hard blackmail on the initiate. So with, for example, the Skull and Bonesman, it involves some homosexual activity in a coffin. That's when I realized George W. Bush was a bad guy. He's a Skull and Bonesman. That means he did some nasty thing in a coffin while people watched. That's the blackmail on them, which secures their place among the brotherhood. You're going to do what we tell you, or we're going to expose all this and kill you, essentially, is what it is. The Freemasons take a death oath. If they reveal anything, they get killed. Freemasons, Illuminati, secret societies, these things have transitioned into the intelligence community. There's a book called Kim by Rudyard Kipling, which is basically the Indian version of Huckleberry Finn. And in this book, he talks about how intelligence communities and spies worked in 1890 through like 1910. That's the sort of time period it's in. And Rudyard Kipling himself was a Freemason. So what it shows is that a lot of these intelligence communities lean into the mystery religious schools of thoughts. That's why with the CIA, MK Ultra incorporates things like SRA, satanic ritual abuse, which causes PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, fragments the mind, you get dissociation. Dissociation is something that the Indians and the Fakirs and all, F-A-K-I-R, that's something their religious tradition, this mystery school of thought, has had core to it in a lot of their traditions for hundreds of years. It's not just them. A lot of the elites in Europe have been involved with that. A lot of the, the Croatian types, the Dracula types, they literally drinking blood. I mean, real vampires exist. Hillary Clinton's one. Nancy Pelosi's one. These people, that's what they are. That's what they look like. But, people think, no, they're just a lefty, a Democrat. Well, in reality, they're following this metaphysical physics, this physics to morality. This cult is what they're following. And it's been around since Adam and Eve, since Cain and Abel. Since the pre-flood world, after the flood, Ham either sees his dad naked or sees his mom naked or something, and Noah curses him. And basically the post-flood world was Mad Max. We'll get into that later. It was an advanced technological civilization and very few survivors, and they propagated quickly, but they still had a long lifespan because the genetic makeup of mankind wasn't beset with impurities through cultic practices, basically. Mankind's like a tree, right? If you look at mankind from Adam to now. Adam and Eve were the seed. God could have uprooted that seed when it was shown to have an issue to it, but he didn't want to kill the tree. Now the seed has grown up. It's gotten it's a redwood. And half the redwood is fruitful, and the other half is dark Nightmare Before Christmas Land. Okay? And what the occultists do is it's a yin-yang give and take thing. Every evil thing they do is counteracted by something good because it's greater than the evil. Evil is just spoilt goodness. Nobody's evil for the purpose of being evil. A lot of people who are evil think they're doing good. It's just spoiled. It's bent, as the Hnao said in Out of the Silent Planet. It's bent is what it is. It's broken. That's what evil is primarily. So this brokenness in the tree of humanity is spread by these occultic activities. The CIA, the NSA, the FBI, MI6, Mossad, they all, Kabbalah, which is not an intelligence agency group, but it's out of the Israeli sector. These things, they're all basically exploiting this metaphysical reality. So socialism, collectivism, it's a way of bringing uninitiated salt of the earth types who actually follow God into that fold unaware. See, they've rebranded the mystery religious ideology into proletariat bourgeoisie. Now, this starts all the way back with the Jacobins in France. Remember, there's a revolution because Marie Antoinette, who I believe is from Hungary, says, let them eat cake. Why does she say this? She's a royal person who doesn't know any better. And she's like, well, I eat cake, so why can't they eat the cake? And they're like, we don't have any bread at all! You want us to eat cake? We don't even have bread? Off with her head! And it was actually kind of sad. I don't think she knew any better. Now, I'm sure she might have done some ritual occultic stuff in those circles, but she might not have as well, because the people who beheaded her were Jacobins, and Jacobins were basically French Antifa in the end of the 18th century, 1700s. So the Jacobins they tried to institute a 10-day week. Okay? Think about that, a 10-day week. Now, have you ever thought about this? We have a 7-day week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, those names are not what God originally named them. Thursday, for example, derives from a Norse religion, Thor's Day. Wednesday, that's a day everybody gets married. I don't know why you do it then. I do it Friday or Saturday, but the ancient world's different. There were 360-day years in the ancient world. That changed for a reason. We'll get into that another time. But the 7-day week is not explicable without God. It's just not. If we all evolved separately, then society would evolve separately, and monkey clans would designate their own weeks and months and years, their own way of catalog. Why not base 10? 365? Why don't we do 360 divided into 36 weeks, and every 10 years we have, 5 times 10 is 50. We have a 5-week leap month that's 50 days of partying. Why wouldn't they do something like that? Why is it 7 days? You can't find anything except the Genesis account to explain that. There's no reason for 7 days except God. There's none. The week itself is clear evidence God's real. There's no way around it. The Jacobins understood that. They tried to get rid of the week. You know why they couldn't do it? Because of things like circadian rhythms. Now, circadian rhythms generally deal with day-night cycles. Morning, evening. When it gets dark out, you do get a little tired, naturally, because your body's configured with those rhythms. That's one of the reasons Satanists try and operate at night, is they're trying to reverse that circadian rhythm. The Jacobins tried to get rid of a week. It turns out the human body, psychologically and physically, is configured for about 6 days of work, provided we get a day of rest. That's how we're configured. And it's not just human beings. The land itself, it'll be 6 years with a 7th year of rest. If you don't take these periods, then you get things like the Great Depression. In the Great Depression, because stock prices fell and farmers had to make money, they over-farmed their land so much that all the moisture and minerals were leached out of it, and it became dust. Then the Dust Bowl transpired. The Dust Bowl didn't need to happen. It happened because of the economy, and we are on the threshold of something like that. Now, I've been saying that for a long time. Since at least 2008, when I saw that Chuck Missler video, I've been on the case. The Luciferian mystery religious school of thought people, they've been pushing for a one-world government since prior Christ. The antediluvian world was a one-world government. probably along socialist segues, because this is just rebranded luciferianism. It was the same sort of system where bureaucrats acted as kings and queens, and everybody else became feudal peasants. It was the same thing, just in a different era. They probably had the same levels of technology, in fact, greater technology than we have. If you don't believe that, look into Machu Picchu, look into the pyramids. There's an underwater city off the coast of Japan. They find evidences. In South America, they've got a little thing. They're like, oh, it's a fly. No, it's obviously an airplane. It's got the wings, the front wings, the tail wings. It's an airplane. It looks like a space shuttle. They had all this stuff. All right? Our modern technological superiority, it's not. It is a reflection, it's an echo of something that's already been, and probably not nearly as pure as the original sound, just as an echo is never as loud or as robust as that which produces the echo. You go, hello, low, low. We're one of those lows way on the far end. The hell was way at the beginning. So you can find that, it's even in Scripture, Ecclesiastes 1:9, the thing that has been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. This really opened me up. That idea, because I thought, well, they didn't go to the moon pre-flood, or did they? How do we know? I imagine they had some sort of internet that used magnetism or something instead of satellites, because there's supposed to be a canopy over the world. And I wonder about modern space flight. I really do. I wonder why there's so much secrecy about it. I wonder if they found remains of an antediluvian trip to the moon up there. There's a book called Ice by a woman who goes by the pen name Shane Johnson about that. And I wrote a novel called The Thief and the Sacrifice, which is about a technologically advanced pre-flood world. These things are evidenced in the History Channel went off the deep end doing Ancient Aliens because there's so much evidence for this kind of stuff. If you look at Aboriginal pictures of aliens, Aboriginal pictures of demons, they look like alien greys. They're round, gray head, big black eyes. That's the Aborigines. We're talking thousands of years before the English even knew there was an Australia. Okay? So we've got it backwards. And it's because, and I'm getting to it, it's because of this occult ideology, this luciferianism, this do as thou wilt. Because the devil wants to suck everybody into himself. He says, I will be like the Most High. I will be like God. I will be like you. He can't be like God. We're not going to worship him. We are built to run on the diesel of God. The devil runs on the vegetable oil of bullshit. Well, you can't run a diesel car on vegetable oil. You can't do it. You got to totally reconfigure the engine, you see. So that's what the Luciferian mystery religious schools are really about. It's about psychologically reconditioning our engines in a spiritual, psychological way, such that we willingly align ourselves to a collectivist ideology. A big part of that is hallucinogenic compounds. When the Spanish conquistadors came to South America in the 14, 15, and 1600s, they went to Mexico City. Mexico City is built on a lake. When they came to that city, they found one of the most technologically advanced and amazing things they'd ever seen. It was more advanced than many cities in Europe. With one catch. There's a big temple, whacked out hallucinating priest would reach in and he would Kalima! Just like an Indian tradition, that they did it over there too. Rip out that guy's heart, throw the body down the temple stairs, and they drink the blood. They adrenochromed the guy. Okay? If you watch last year in 2019, Alex Jones goes on Joe Rogan and talks all about this kind of stuff. Apparently there was some penis smoking going on where it was disgusting. Point being, these ancient civilizations used hallucinogens. They used hallucinogenic compounds to align the people. Because in these compounds, when these people get high, they see these shapes and these mechanistic, and they get in their brains this idea, oh, I can be a cog in this beautiful machine, this laughing, joyous parade of insanity. You want to see it? You want to know some more about this stuff? Look up the movie Paprika. There's a crazy man in the dream world who has this wild festival, and it's invading everybody's dreams. That's like the hallucinogenic trip these people are doing. It brainwashes them, it aligns them, it gets them in lockstep. So the Mexican society was in this spiritual lockstep. The way that the socialist society they're going for ends up looking like the Kims, like the Aztecs, the Incas, the Olmec, the Mayans, it looks very similar. Everybody's going to get on some drug. They're going to be in lockstep to the leaders of the society. And expendable people get murdered, and their vital fluids are used as drugs by the elite bureaucratic class. And it's this collective thing. Because the devil's he comes to kill, steal, and destroy because he's trying to totally reconfigure the tree of humanity to produce his fruit. But only the godly side of the tree of humanity is producing fruit. The devil side is a charred out black husk out of Tim Burton wet dream. It's nothing. Okay? So it's trying to configure us so that we can take that on. So the Inca, the Aztec, the Olmec, they were in the slot. They were in the pocket for this stuff. And the conquistadors were like, oh my goodness, this is not good. We cannot deal with this. And they killed them. Now, I don't like genocide. I don't think that's good. But my gosh, if I go to a city and they're ripping a guy's heart out and throwing him down the stairs, yeah, screw those guys. Yeah, my society's better. I don't, that is inferior. Listen, the Nazis, the National Socialists, inferior. It's like this. It's kind of ironic, really. It's like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker are in Bespin, that cloud city, over that yawning abyss. And Darth Vader is Hitler, and Luke Skywalker is Antifa. And Darth Vader is like, Obama never told you who your father is, who killed your father. And Antifa, Luke Skywalker is like, he told me you killed him. And Hitler, Vader's like, no, Antifa puke. I am your father. That's what it's like, okay? National Socialism was birthed from a leftist movement and became the authoritarian far-right fascist jerks they were. The Native Americans in America were running around having fun. I imagine prior to the Aztec Olmec tribes, everybody was running around drinking ayahuasca, having a grand old time down there in the desert. And then what happens? Well, they got confederated. Native Americans had cannibals. They had cannibals. In Winnemucca, Nevada, there is a legend of these red-headed cannibals who were evil and terrible and giants. They were 7 to 8 feet tall compared to the Winnemuccans, who were 4 to 6 feet tall. And so they got together in a tribe, chased them into a cave, set it on fire, burned them out, and the remains are there. You can Google this, okay? In Seattle, where Chaz is hanging out, they also had cannibal tribes. They did. Now, they were good, peace-loving, happy Indian tribes that weren't evil and probably actually followed God, because in Romans it says everybody knows God exists. That they say otherwise is a lie they're probably telling themselves. That's called presuppositional apologetics. We'll go into that another time. But there were good tribes, and there were bad ones. You know, the Crow Indian, they were pretty savage. They're different than the Cheyenne Indian, all right? So you got to take these things into account. You can't just look at any past group of people as a monolith and chuck them all in the dumpster fire of history. It's not how it works. There were good Confederate soldiers and bad Confederate soldiers. There were bad Union soldiers and good Union soldiers. And a lot of the people that are co-opted into the socialist ideology mean well. They really do. They don't realize the implications. A lot of time, I've been blessed with some smarts. The Pareto principle, 20-80 distribution, 20% good, 80 bad, or 20% greedy, 80 broke, what have you. There's different ways of calculating it, but it applies to intellect as well. The majority of the United States has a IQ in the 90 to 100 range or less. Okay? Most people don't have the time, inclination, energy, or ability to understand these deep ways by which they're being psychologically manipulated through occult mystery religious schools. And the occultists, the socialists, the Marxists, Karl Marx, they understand this very well. So they're co-opting these people with something that sounds pseudo-biblical. It's kind of like the Book of Mormon. Mark Twain does the best job satirizing that ever. He says one of the funniest things in the book Roughing It. He says, you know, you can't be mean to these Mormons, because after living among them in Brigham Young's fiefdom and looking at the 20 or 30 or 40 or so wives he had, I took a sighting of these homely, unattractive creatures, and I realized to marry one of them is a graceful act of charity. To marry 40 of them is a saintly duty. He was basically saying the reason they're polygamous is the Mormons just marry the ugly ones. That's horrible. That's not nice. Mark Twain said it. It's in the book Roughing It. Hilarious chapter on the Mormons. You got to check it out. But what they did is they plagiarized the Bible, and he also talks about this, and they would use these lofty terms to sort of ape act like the King James Version. And most uneducated people didn't know. Mark Twain only had a 6th grade education. He gained by his knowledge, honestly, because he had a fascination and a love of it. And he learned, like many of us do in the modern world, he learned what was what, who was who in the zoo. And he was able to see right through the Book of Mormon. Well, Marx did the same thing in a political way. People didn't even realize they were looking into an ideological cult, but I'll break it down for you. It says, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Now that assumes ability and needs are equal. They're distributed equally across mankind. It's not how God did it. Some people are retarded. Some people are Einstein. Okay? Einstein and Forrest Gump, not equal. They're not. They're both white guys. Shoot, people probably liked Forrest Gump more than Einstein if they had a conversation with him. But Forrest Gump just sort of stumbled into success because his fictional narrative was God. It's a good movie because that's sort of how God does it for us idiots. And Einstein, he didn't stumble into anything. Well, he probably had his own stumblings. But point being, you can't treat those people the same in a society. Marxism would have you do that. From each is according to his ability, to each according to his needs. That assumes needs and ability are equal. They're not. So naturally, what happens is bureaucrats have to come in and bust up those with ability and distribute it to those with need. So the Bolsheviks in 1918, 1919, 1920, they went and destroyed all the collective farms. These people were having the closest thing to real socialism as espoused in the utopian literature you can get, which is a group of people sharing everything in a family unit in a way that is fair and balanced and covers everybody in the community. And the reason the collective farms of Russia worked, the reason the kibbutz worked in Israel, is because these people had at their center God himself. So they were truly loving their neighbor as themselves. If you don't work, you shall not eat, but you should take care of the orphan and the widow. That's God's idea of welfare. It is that if you are able, you should be using your ability to help everybody. And if you're not, people help you out. But socialism bureaucratizes that. And it says, here are our standards, and we're going to adhere to them come what may. And what it does is it gets rid of religion. Karl Marx called religion the opiate of the masses, so that he could position his own luciferian ideology in that place, which is collective. And what does it do? It tells us not to think for ourselves, but to think for the group collective. It pools our resources together, and it puts mankind in the center, you see. Man becomes the deity. They worship Stalin, they worship Lenin, they worship Mao, they worship the Kims, they worship Fidel Castro. Every socialist society positions the leadership as a deity and makes it so that worshiping that deity is your civic patriotic duty. It's just a new religion, okay? And in the centers of these bureaucratic circles, you always have Satanists. Hitler had Goebbels, and they did Luciferian rituals. They did maypole things. They had a new Nazi religion. Stalin's cult of personality was similar. Lenin, Satanist, okay? All these people, the Luciferian ideal, which is the brave new world that was spoken of by Huxley, he was talking about their plan. It's been around for hundreds of years. When Christ died and rose again, the devil realized he pulled a boner and got it backwards, and that the death was actually a victory because it led to the resurrection, which allowed the reality simulation we live in to function in a new way where previously it couldn't. The devil's a Microsoft setup wizard. He's Clippy the paperclip in Microsoft Word. And Microsoft Word is the universe, and God is the programmer of Microsoft Word. There's no equivalency there. And Clippy the paperclip was telling everybody to make grammatical errors and making it so that none of the programs could be saved. So God went in there and he put in an automatic editor, an autocorrect, which bypassed Clippy. And now Clippy's like, shit, I need to come up with my own autocorrect. Oh, what do I do? So that's what's been going on. So the office from which the Antichrist comes has been in the works since at least Christ, probably before that, because pre-flood things got so wicked they had to flood the pool and get everybody out of it. God did. So the occultic ideology that's being espoused through Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley and Alice Bailey and Jack Parsons and Karl Marx and Charles Darwin, it's all coming from the same place. It's all the same thing. It's just been rebranded for the next generation. Before there were extraterrestrials, there were sprites and fairies and ghouls and goblins and ogres. They were the same thing. It was just the word used to describe this extra dimensional intelligence. Okay? If you look at some of the pictures of fairies, they look like ETs. Okay? And here's the clever bit. So socialism comes, right? Evolutionary ideology and socialism are hand in glove. Darwin and Marx even communicated. They're contemporaries if you look into the history. And see, what socialism does is it's trying to force human evolution. The idea is that if mankind is put in ideal circumstances, the ideal result will develop. It's a nurture over nature argument. That argument always fails because it's not nature or nurture. It's not nature versus nurture. It's neither. It's choice. You can have horrible nature and horrible nurture and still turn out good. You can have good nature turn out bad. You can have nature treat you like crap and be nurtured well and turn out good or bad. You can have nature treat you great and be nurtured bad, turn out good or bad. It depends on what you do because we have free will. So the Marxian ideal is that if you create an ideal reality for mankind to live in, an ideal playpen, then he will be ideal. But that's not true because we have free will. And some of us are going to try and watch the world burn. That was the important part of the movie The Dark Knight, where Heath Ledger played the Joker and Michael Caine said, some men just want to watch the world burn. Well, it's true. Some people do. So no socialist society can ever work because mankind's human nature in a psychological, spiritual, metaphysical way is opposed to that. And it's fundamentally flawed. So socialism is a bait and switch vehicle to induct collective mystery religious ideology into the populace. Evolution is another wing of that. Now these things sound like conspiracies. Well, they are, but they're not. We wrestle not with flesh and blood, but with spiritual wickedness in high places. Right? So it's not that the Bolsheviks and Antifa and the LGBTQ WXYZP plus minus exclamation point alphabet people and the Russians and the North Koreans and the Chinese. It's not that they're all confederating together. Now some of them are because the globalist elite through the Bilderberg groups and the UN, which was the League of Nations, basically Hitler did what they wanted to do faster and it embarrassed them so they had to distance themselves. So there is some level of people meeting together behind closed doors. But there's another level to it, which is spiritual, which is orchestrated externally from without by extra-dimensional entities. And so these will have one entity, one demon or fallen angel. That's another distinction. They're different. We'll get into that later. Stir up some people in England. You know, the mystery religious ideology of Hinduism. There's a movie called Altered States, which came out in the 80s, in which the guy drops some hallucinogen and sees mankind evolving. Well, the evolutionary ideology isn't one unique to Darwin. He actually expropriated that from his own grandfather, or I think it was his grandfather who had a similar idea. He just popularized it. So the demons are messing around with hallucinogens and substances over here, and it's resulting in some ideas that are gaining some traction in England. Meanwhile, in Germany, there's this disaffected Jewish guy named Karl Marx who's never worked a day in his life and wants to come up with a theory of how everything can be done for him. He's lining out his utopia, and he reads Darwin, and he's like, I love your work, and it influences him, and so it influences socialism. You know, you have he writes the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital. And it's really ironic. Marxism is based in Marx. Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. They say communism isn't Marxism, but he wrote the Communist Manifesto. So obviously that was the goal. They're lying to you because they know you haven't read the literature. They know it. They know it. They know you haven't looked into it. So anyway, Marx sees socialism as a means of forcing human evolution. Meanwhile, evolutionary ideology is a way of vindicating the appearance of sprites, fairies, ogres, witches, wizards, demons, fallen angels, in a modern industrialized way that doesn't have that smattering of the metaphysical about it. keeps people off the beaten track. So instead of a conglomeration of extraterrestrials that evolved separate from mankind on a planet where silicon is the evolutionary life element rather than carbon, well, maybe they would have a different look to them and have their own technology. So evolution gives us that door to that idea, right? So then when the demons and the fallen angels and these extra dimensional entities that are infernal break into our space-time domain again, instead of recognizing them for what they are, we look at them as the alien, right? And then we look at our previous ancestors who saw these things and knew what they were as, oh, unsophisticated, uneducated savages. They were just so stupid back then. No, they weren't. You look at ancient aliens, those, now granted they're misinterpreting it, but ancient people had a lot better grasp of reality than we do today. I'm on this computer. You take this computer apart, I can't solder the circuits and fix it. You take my smartphone apart, I can't fix that. You take my car's engine apart, there's one or two things I can do on there, but I'm out to lunch for the most part. Most of us are standing on the shoulders of achievements others have made individually, which have become expediently distributed throughout society, such that we can benefit from them without having to do the work that brought them into reality. And as a result, we become elitist and entitled leftist idiots in jazz. Not all of us, of course, but a lot of us do become that way, sadly. And that's just how the devil wants it. So, what it all leads to is multiple areas of deception bleeding together as a means of corrupting the tree of humanity such that it's a single dead edifice that is collectivized under the devil. Look at a neural network, and that's what's being formed right now. A neural network combines multiple individual servers together into one whole. It's like pixels on a screen. So cloud computing works that way. There'll be 1,000 servers all networked together into one group, and they function corporately like a hologram. So if one bit of data is lost here, the rest is evenly distributed about the rest of the servers. So even though you lose this one server, you don't lose the data that was on it. 06 House Bill talked about making human activity something that pays out in cryptocurrency by using the vaccinated injections with the chip and everything that has the glass silicon that Bill Gates wanted to give us out of the goodness of his heart. So what I think 5G probably is a means of exploiting that sort of technology, but I'm not sure. I think I think it's evil for a different reason than the conspiracy theorists think, but that's another rabbit hole. We'll get down that another time, and I'm not dogmatic about it. However, it says in the end times there will come a mark, the mark of the beast. It'll be in the right hand or the forehead, where they're trying to put all these chips. And now they've had this House bill about cryptocurrency where whatever you do becomes money. Well, there's such a thing as cryptojacking, where a software virus is downloaded onto your computer, and your computer does functions in the background which slow it down so that the crypto miners get money. Mining Bitcoin involves putting a bunch of servers up that do a bunch of little tiny online functions, and each one gives you a fraction of a cent from a Bitcoin. And if you get enough servers together, you'll make enough money from those actions running 24/7 to cover your costs of electricity, space, and technology, and then make a profit. And it's probably something that takes 6 months to a year to get going. And then once it's going, you're just kind of treading water. Cryptojacking is a lot cheaper way of doing the same thing. A hacker just writes a virus in a third-party app you download from the App Store that you don't realize. It gets on 1 billion devices, and they all perform one little action, and he doesn't have to pay anything but for the virus itself, and his cryptocurrency account just goes through the roof. Well, they want to make it so that our bodies generate Bitcoin cryptocurrency. And that means cryptojacking will occur. Ultimately, we become cyborgs, cybernetic organisms. We become plugged into a neural network, which is birthed from cloud computing, the Internet of Things, smartphones, etc. We're there. Quantum computing, that is computing at the quantum level, was launched. Google is using that now. What do they say in Google up until about 10 years ago? Don't be evil. Then everybody dropped acid at Burning Man, and they took away that slogan. Google and Facebook are probably run by the CIA. The CIA is the new Illuminati, the new Masons. They're going to look at this. They're not going to do anything about it, because if they do anything about it, that proves what I'm saying. Or they're going to block me before I get to enough people, and they'll just relegate me to the fringe. But right now, they're up shit creek because so many of their lies are being exposed. And there's no way around it. There's no way they can stop that, except to either lean into it and admit it, or deny it and sweep it under the rug. And it's just too big a pile to be swept under the rug. There's going to be a big lump there. People are tripping over. I'm like, what's the deal with this rug? Oh my gosh, it's a bunch of CIA, SRA, PTSD, LSD, BS. There's a lot of, if you understood what I said, I'm sorry. So what Silicon represents today is a bureaucratic, technocratic elite. They're doing these drugs to get everybody in lockstep. Tim Cook's funded by China, because there's these Apple factories out there. Jack Dorsey and Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, all these people in the technocratic hinterlands of San Francisco, where prior COVID-19 people were pooping in the streets. All these people are trying to trick us into being part of their collective. And what happens eventually with this neural network? Well, Bill Gates was talking about how that chip that they were going to put out in the vaccine actually changes your genetic makeup. What I imagine happens, and I'm not sure, whatever the mark of the beast is, takes away your brain and it sticks it in a neural network. Basically, the devil's trying to plug us all in there so that he can capitalize off the spiritual, metaphysical energy of mankind for his own purposes. You know, the Matrix, mankind's a battery. Well, that doesn't make sense. It'd be better if it were a car. Originally, the writers of the Matrix had the idea that mankind would be part of a neural network which composed the machines, and that got changed in the production or something. Well, this is a revelation of the method. Everybody in those pods being plugged in, that's sort of what the mark of the beast is, I think. And that's what we're marching toward, and that's what Antifa is bringing upon the earth ignorantly. They don't realize they'll just be a peon. National identity is fundamental. Individual freedoms are fundamental. Without these things, we become just a collective, like a hive mind. And that's what they're pushing toward. That's what the hallucinogenics are pushing toward. That's why the progressives on the left will come after you if you disagree with them. It's a hive mind consciousness that's being spoken into existence in the world using these occult psychological ideologies. Okay? That's what is being foisted on us right now. And these poor idiots have been hoodwinked since they were 5 years old. When I was in kindergarten, I had a kindergarten teacher in Wyoming who said, "Oh, look, here's Mother Earth." And she had a globe. And I said, "Oh, wow, where's Father God?" She's like, "We don't talk about that in class." See, little kids are being tricked by this. From the time they're 5 years old in public school, of course they're going to be socialist idiots. They've been taught to be entitled. They've been taught to be revolutionaries. They've been taught that a man with a penis can give birth. That's impossible and retarded. Okay? It's not insensitive for me to say that, and it's my right as an American citizen to have that opinion. And it's not right for Google and Facebook and YouTube, which told us that they were a free platform for anybody to say what they want, to wait until they've got the majority of the world on their platform and then change the game. That's a bait and switch. These people are publishers. Look, I can't create a platform with 3.7 billion users based on my funding. I don't have the money for that. They're an oligarchy, just like the oil companies were, setting the prices once they got all together. It's the same thing rebranded. The Bolsheviks of the 1918 revolution are now called Antifa and BLM, but they're the same people, it's the same spirit. So you shouldn't be taken in. What do? Well, a good thing to do is to vote for Trump. Not because you like him, not because he's graceful, not because he's God's gift to humanity, though he might be, not because he's perfect, but because he's a wrench in the works of the globalist, sacred geometry, hallucinogenic, collectivist, hive mind, luciferian machine. He's a wrench in that machine, and it 6 ways of Sunday are getting back at you. My name's Nancy Pelosi, and I'm going to bow down in a multicolored uniform that reminds me of Africa, but which I don't know was actually the uniform worn by black slavers in Africa a long time ago. That's what we're looking at right now. That's what these collectivists are doing. You don't want that running the country, because if it runs the country, by proxy, it runs the world. You want national individual identity. Ironically, they're preaching diversity with these collective mobs, but if they got their way, there would be no diversity. It would be like those bald, colorless people pooping out their mouths in that South Park episode where they came from the future to get jobs. And then the people in the present were like, they took our jobs! Well, that's where we're heading. We're heading to those people. We're heading to idiocracy. And I've been saying it for over 10 years. And people think I'm a jerk. I just want to tell the truth. And I know that if this doesn't get stopped, it doesn't matter if I make it famous. I'm just going to be a marionette on the socialist elite's royal strings. I don't want to be a jester in the court of the devil.